Emily Carter never expected a simple volunteer task to shake her life, but that was before she walked back into Ridge Valley High, the school she had not stepped inside for almost 12 years. She was 30 now, living in a quiet Seattle suburb, married to a man who treated life like a checklist. Their marriage was steady, calm, polite, and for a long time she convinced herself that was enough, yet some part of her heart still felt half awake, like it was waiting for something she couldn't name. The school looked smaller than she remembered, but the memories rushed back fast, like a tide that had been waiting for her return. She had come to help plan the school's 50th anniversary celebration, telling her husband she wanted to reconnect with old classmates, but in truth she was searching for something she didn't understand, a spark she used to feel when life felt larger and more alive. Her teenage years had been difficult, her family had fallen apart, and she had survived it all by clinging to small moments of hope. One of those moments came from her English teacher, Daniel Hayes, a man who taught literature with a warmth that made stories feel like lifelines. He never crossed any lines, never blurred roles, but his kindness had changed her path. He encouraged her writing, helped her see strength inside her pain, and for a girl who felt invisible at home, that meant everything. She never forgot him. Even when she tried, she never forgot the safety of his presence or the way his gentle voice made the world feel less cruel. And she never forgot the day she left for college, when he wished her luck with a smile that held something she was too young to understand at the time. Now she walked through the halls as an adult, her heels clicking against the old floors, and she saw her reflection in the glass trophy case. The woman staring back looked composed, calm, responsible, but her eyes held a restlessness she had stopped trying to explain to anyone, even herself. She turned a corner and paused, breathing in that old familiar scent of pencil shavings and books. Then she heard a voice behind her, warm and steady, a voice she had not heard in so many years. "Emily," it said, soft but surprised. She froze before turning around slowly, already knowing who she would see. Daniel Hayes stood just a few feet away, older now but still carrying the same calm energy that made people lean in without realizing it. His hair had more silver, his posture remained confident, and his eyes still held that gentle depth she remembered. For a moment she forgot to breathe. Their worlds had just collided again, and the impact felt stronger than she expected. "Mr. Hayes," she whispered with a breath she didn't know she had been holding. He laughed lightly, the sound warm and familiar. "Just Daniel now," he said. His smile deepened, and she felt something inside her lift like a small flame that had been waiting for air. They stood there longer than two old acquaintances normally would, caught between past and present, a hallway full of memories wrapped around them. And Emily felt time fold in on itself, mixing who she was then and who she was now into something she didn't know how to handle. After a moment Daniel cleared his throat gently. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. "Maybe we can talk in my office, it's quieter there." His tone was casual, respectful, but something underneath carried an emotion she couldn't name. She nodded before she could think through what she was agreeing to. As they walked toward his office, Emily felt her heartbeat shift, not racing but steady and deep, like her body knew something she hadn't realized yet. When they stepped inside, she noticed it looked almost the same as before, books everywhere, soft lighting, a few framed photos of old class projects. The room had always felt safe to her, warm like a quiet pocket of the world where she didn't have to pretend to be okay. Daniel closed the door behind them gently, a simple motion, respectful and natural, but it still made her breath catch for a second, not from fear, but from the sudden closeness that wrapped around them now that the rest of the world was on the other side of that door. He walked to his desk and motioned for her to sit. She did, trying to ignore the swirl of emotion she wasn't ready to name. "I honestly didn't think I'd ever see you again," he said with a soft smile. "You look well, Emily," she thanked him, her voice a little smaller than she intended. He asked about her life, her career, her marriage, and she answered, keeping her words simple. She didn't lie, she didn't overshare. She just told the truth in pieces, and he listened the same way he always had, patient, steady, fully present. When she asked about his life, he gave small honest details. He still taught English, still loved the work, still believed stories could change a person's path. He never married, though he didn't explain why, and she didn't ask. Even though a quiet curiosity spread inside her, she sensed loneliness in him but also peace, like a man who had chosen stillness over chaos and simply learned to live with the echoes. Their conversation flowed easily, too easily, like water finding its old path. Emily felt herself opening up in ways she didn't expect. She laughed more softly, smiled more freely, and felt an old version of herself waking up inside her chest. A girl who once believed she could rewrite her future. A girl who once felt seen by someone who believed she mattered. At one point Daniel leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his desk. "I always wondered what happened to you," he confessed gently. His voice had no hidden meaning, only genuine care, but the words still hit something deep inside her. "You had so much strength back then, even when you didn't see it." Her breath caught again, not with fear but with emotion. She didn't know why hearing that mattered so much, but it did, because she hadn't felt strong in a long time. She had felt steady, responsible, predictable, but not strong, not alive in the way she once was when dreams felt large and possible. There was a pause, quiet but warm. He watched her with the same patient calm he once used to help her through tough essays, and she felt like she was standing on the edge of an old truth she once ran from. "It's good to see you," she said softly. "Really good." He smiled, but there was something else in his eyes now, something unspoken, something that made the air feel charged in a subtle, aching way. She shifted in her chair, trying to steady herself, reminding her heart that she was married, that she had a life outside this room, that this moment didn't mean what it felt like it meant. Still, something had changed. She felt it. He felt it, even though neither of them said anything more than polite words. It was not attraction in an inappropriate way, nothing reckless or forbidden. It was two adults with a shared history feeling the weight of unresolved emotion, the kind that comes when life takes you away from someone who once mattered more than you realized. Emily's hands trembled slightly in her lap, not from fear, but from the sudden awareness that this meeting was not simple. It was not casual, it was not empty. Sometimes life brings people back to you not for romance or drama, but to show you the parts of yourself you stopped listening to, the parts you forgot you needed. As she stood to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. A soft quiet between them. "I'm glad you came back to the school," he said gently. "It means more than you know." She looked at him, and for a brief moment the world outside his office faded away. Her heart felt full, heavy, grateful, confused, all at once. "It means something to me too," she whispered. He opened the door, letting the bright hallway light spill in, but neither of them stepped out right away. It was a single moment, suspended, delicate, full of things neither could say without risking the balance of their lives. And then she walked out, leaving the office behind, but carrying a new ache inside her chest, an ache that told her life was about to get more complicated, and maybe more honest, because sometimes all it takes is walking into the past to realize how much of yourself you left behind there. Emily returned to Ridge Valley High the next day, telling herself it was only for event planning. She needed to finalize decoration lists and confirm alumni attendance. Nothing more, nothing personal. But the moment she walked through the front doors, familiar rush of warmth and nerves hit her again, like the building had its own heartbeat calling her back. She told herself she wouldn't look for Daniel, she wouldn't wait for him to appear, she wouldn't replay yesterday's conversation in her mind. But her heart didn't listen. It kept replaying his smile, his calm voice, the gentle way he listened, things she wasn't used to feeling in her own home anymore. Her marriage was not bad, not broken, just quiet. Her husband, Mark, lived life by routines: morning coffee at 7, work at 8, dinner at 6, silent TV time at 9. He was a good man, dependable, safe, but their relationship had become a schedule, not a connection. They rarely talked about feelings, dreams, disappointments. They shared a house but not a heart, and Emily had convinced herself that was normal, until she walked into her old school and felt her chest wake up again. She tried to stay focused on paperwork as she sat at a table in the library, but her thoughts drifted toward Daniel ever so slightly, and each time she pulled them back she realized they slipped away again like water through fingers. She felt guilty, but she also felt alive, and that mix confused her more than anything else. When she stepped into the main hallway to return a box of old photos, she nearly bumped into him. Daniel stood there holding a stack of books, and his eyes lit up with quiet surprise when he saw her. "You're here again," he said softly, his voice warm. Emily felt her heartbeat shift just from the tone of his words. She smiled, trying to keep things simple. "Just finishing some planning," she said. "It's a big event." He nodded, but something in his expression showed he wanted to say more. They walked together toward the office, their steps matching without effort. Neither spoke for a moment, but the silence felt calm, not awkward, like two people who didn't need to fill the space to feel connected. Inside the office, the day moved quickly, and Emily worked through binders while Daniel graded essays, occasionally exchanging small comments about the event, the weather, old traditions. Yet beneath every simple conversation there was an undercurrent of unspoken emotion, a growing awareness neither of them dared name. Later that afternoon, a winter storm rolled over the town, the sky darkened early, snow began falling heavily, and the school emptied faster than usual. Emily realized she had lost track of time, and by the time she gathered her things, she saw rows of headlights disappearing into the snowy parking lot outside. She hesitated, watching thick flakes blur the windows. "Are you driving in this?" Daniel asked, glancing up from his desk. She shrugged. "I should, but it's getting pretty rough out there." He stood and looked outside, concern softening his voice. "You can stay a little longer if you want, let the worst of it pass." Emily nodded, relieved, though she wasn't sure if the relief was from avoiding the weather or from not having to leave him just yet. She sat again, her hands warming around a paper cup of coffee Daniel offered her. They talked a little more freely now, the storm creating a cocoon of quiet around the school. She told him about her writing dreams she had abandoned years ago. He listened with the same attention he once gave her essays, encouraging her with gentle questions. "Did you stop because life got busy?" he asked. "Or because you felt alone in it?" She looked down at her hands, surprised he had touched so quickly on something she rarely admitted. Even to herself, "Maybe a bit of both," she whispered. He leaned against the edge of his desk, his posture relaxed. "You were one of the most expressive students I ever had," he said. "I always thought you had a gift for emotion on the page." Emily felt her throat tighten. She had not heard someone believe in her like that in years. Mark supported her hobbies in a practical way, but he never spoke about them with passion or depth. Never asked what her stories meant to her or why she wrote in the first place. The storm outside grew stronger, wind pushing snow against the windows, turning the world into a white blur. The office lights flickered slightly, and the softness of the moment deepened. Emily felt the stillness wrap around them like the world had temporarily paused its noise. Daniel sat across from her, his eyes warm with understanding. He didn't judge the cracks she confessed, didn't rush her through her feelings. He simply let her speak, and she realized she didn't have to hide anything from him, not her doubts, not her dreams, not her loneliness. "I feel like I'm watching my life instead of living it," she said quietly. "Like everything is happening in slow motion and I'm just going through the motions." Daniel nodded slowly, his voice gentle but steady. "You're not the first person to feel that way," he said. "But you deserve more than numbness. You deserve a life that makes your heart feel whole." His words hit her deeper than she expected. Her eyes stung. Not from sadness but from the strange comfort of being understood without having to explain every detail. She wiped a tear quickly, embarrassed, but Daniel simply offered a soft, reassuring expression. Nothing intrusive, nothing inappropriate, just human compassion, warm and grounding. She swallowed and tried to steady her voice. "It scares me to think I might have lost myself somewhere along the way." Daniel leaned slightly forward. "Not closer but more honest. Sometimes," he said gently, "we forget who we are because we're trying too hard to be who we think we're supposed to be." The simplicity of his words struck her. He had always spoken like that, clear, emotional, grounded. It was why his students trusted him. It was why she had trusted him once too. And sitting there now, years later, she felt the same thing rising inside her, a quiet sense of being seen, not as a wife, not as a planner, not as a polite adult trying to hold everything together, but as Emily, the girl who once believed her voice mattered. There was no flirtation, no boundary crossed, no inappropriate moment, just an emotional closeness she didn't know she needed until she felt it again. She realized how long it had been since anyone looked at her with genuine attention. Not romantic, not possessive, just deeply present. As the storm began to ease, Emily felt the weight of reality creeping back into her thoughts, her marriage, her responsibilities, her life waiting outside this safe bubble of quiet connection. Daniel noticed her shift and spoke softly. "You should probably head home soon," he said. "But take your time, no rush." She nodded, breathing a little slower, calmer than before. She stood, gathering her coat, trying to steady the mix of gratitude and ache swirling in her chest. Before she left, Daniel spoke again, his voice lower, thoughtful. "Emily," he said, "I'm glad you came back. You remind me that some people carry light even when they don't see it themselves." Her heart tightened, not in romance, but in the sudden awareness that she had been starving for emotional connection without even realizing it. She looked at him, eyes soft, unsure of what to say without sounding too vulnerable. "Thank you," she whispered, "for listening." He smiled, small and genuine. "Always," he said. She stepped into the hallway, the storm finally weakening outside, and she felt a strange mix of strength and confusion. She knew this connection was dangerous only because of the truth it forced her to face, not because anything forbidden had happened. Nothing inappropriate occurred. Nothing romantic was spoken, nothing crossed a line, but emotional honesty can be its own kind of storm, and this one had shaken her heart awake in ways she didn't expect. As she walked toward the exit, the soft hum of the empty school echoed around her. She paused near the door and looked back down the hallway. She couldn't see Daniel from where she stood, but she could feel the shift this week had created. It wasn't desire, it wasn't temptation, it was the painful realization that something in her life was missing, something she had stopped searching for long ago. She stepped outside into the cold air, the snow quiet under her boots, knowing her life was about to become more complicated, because once your heart wakes up, it refuses to go back to sleep, and somewhere inside her, she knew part 3 wasn't going to be easy. The night of the Ridge Valley High anniversary event arrived with crisp air and soft winter lights hanging across the parking lot. Emily stood outside the entrance for a moment, breathing in the cold, trying to steady the mix of nerves and anticipation rising inside her. She told herself she was here for the celebration, for the alumni, for the organizers who needed help, but she knew that wasn't the whole truth. Something deeper pulled her back tonight, something she hadn't allowed herself to face until this moment. Inside, the gym was warm and bright, decorated with blue and gold banners, long tables and soft strings of lights. People laughed, hugged, took pictures, sharing stories from years they once believed were the biggest moments of their lives. Emily smiled politely as she walked through the crowd, greeting old classmates, answering questions about her life, her job, her marriage, but her eyes kept drifting, searching for someone she wasn't supposed to be thinking about this much. She found him near the back of the room, Daniel Hayes, dressed in a simple suit, looking older yet steady. His smile was small but sincere as he talked with a group of former students, and even from across the room Emily felt the familiar warmth that had unsettled her heart all week. When he finally noticed her, his expression shifted, softer, almost relieved, and for a moment it felt like the world paused between them. They didn't rush toward each other, didn't make any dramatic move, but the pull was unmistakable, like gravity recognizing its own center. Emily spent the first hour of the event bouncing between conversations, trying to stay busy, trying not to let her thoughts drift back to him, but every laugh, every glance across the room, every quiet moment pulled her attention toward the truth she kept dodging. Her marriage had been growing silent for years, not because of cruelty or betrayal, but because of distance, slow and unnoticed, and she had buried her own needs so deeply that she forgot what it felt like to be emotionally awake. But this week had changed something inside her, and now every quiet space made her heart ache with the weight of that realization. Eventually Daniel approached her, not hurried, not bold, just steady and calm. "You look beautiful tonight," he said gently, his voice low enough to be private in the noisy room. She felt her breath catch, not from the compliment itself, but from the sincerity behind it. "Thank you," she whispered, trying to maintain her composure. Her hands trembled slightly, hidden within the folds of her dress. They talked about the event, the decorations, the turnout, small things that kept the moment safe, but beneath every word there was an emotional current neither of them could ignore. At one point Daniel glanced toward a quieter hallway and asked softly, "Do you want to step away for a moment?" His tone was respectful, giving her complete choice, no pressure, just an invitation to breathe. She nodded before she even thought about it. They walked down the hallway, lined with old class photos, their footsteps echoing softly. The noise of the event faded behind them, replaced by a warm hush that made it easier to speak honestly. They stepped into a small empty classroom, the same one where she once studied literature and imagined a future filled with possibility. Daniel closed the door gently, not with urgency, not with secrecy, but with the simple intention of giving them space to talk without the noise outside. Emily felt her heartbeat tremble as she leaned against a desk. He stood a few steps away, keeping a respectful distance, his face calm but full of unspoken emotion. "You've been on my mind all week," he said quietly, not dramatic, not romantic, just honest. Emily felt something inside her shift, a mix of fear and longing rising all at once. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, her voice barely steady. "I didn't come back to the school looking for anything." "I know," he replied, "and neither did I." His eyes softened. "But sometimes life brings people back to us at moments we don't expect." Emily looked away, her chest tightening with the truth she had tried so hard to avoid. "I'm married," she whispered. "I made promises, I have a life, a home." Daniel nodded, his expression gentle. "I know that, and I'm not trying to take you from anything." There was a long, quiet pause filled with every emotion they couldn't fully name. She felt tears gather, not from guilt, but from the relief of finally giving voice to the confusion inside her. I didn't realize how lonely I felt, she admitted. Not until this week. Daniel took a careful breath, almost pained. Emily, he said softly. You deserve to feel heard, to feel alive, to feel like your heart matters, and if I reminded you of that, I'm grateful. His voice shook slightly. But I don't want to be something that complicates your life in a way that hurts you. His restraint, his decency, his unwillingness to cross a line, it broke something inside her, because she knew he wasn't driven by desire or impulse. He cared deeply in a way that made her feel seen without making her feel trapped or pulled toward anything inappropriate. I care about you, she confessed, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Not in a dramatic way, not in a forbidden way, but in a way that scares me because I don't understand what it means. Daniel looked pained, but not because of wrongdoing, simply because honest emotions can hurt even when nothing wrong is happening. I care too, he said. More than I should maybe, but caring isn't a mistake. Emily wiped her cheek, frustrated with her own tears. What do I do? She asked. How do I go back home and pretend I didn't feel all of this? Daniel exhaled slowly, choosing his words with care. You don't pretend, he said gently. You don't hide from your truth, you face it. She looked up, confused. Face what? He stepped closer, not too close, just enough that his voice felt like a steady guide. You face your marriage, your needs, your feelings, he said. Not because of me, but because you deserve a life that fills you instead of drains you. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. Start by being honest with yourself, he replied. Don't make choices in the shadows, don't let confusion become regret. There was a long silence, heavy with emotion yet clear of anything inappropriate. They both knew that nothing should happen here, nothing should cross a line. The room held only truth, not temptation, only clarity, not secrecy. Finally Daniel spoke again, voice steady even as his eyes softened. Emily, I want you to be happy, truly happy, even if that happiness has nothing to do with me. The weight of his sincerity hit her harder than anything else that night. He wasn't pulling her toward him. He was letting her go with compassion, giving her the space to choose her life freely. Her heart ached, but not in a destructive way. It was the ache of growth, of awakening, of realizing her life could be different if she chose to face the feelings she had ignored for too long. She stepped toward the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. She looked back at him, eyes filled with gratitude and sadness. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me. Daniel gave a gentle nod. Thank you for coming back, he said. You brought something good into my days again. Emily opened the door slowly, the bright hallway light spilling in like a reminder of the world waiting outside. She stepped through, the sound of distant music drifting toward her. She walked down the hall with tears slipping softly, knowing this moment would stay with her, not as a romantic memory, but as a turning point, a quiet awakening. And behind her, Daniel stood in the empty classroom, his hands in his pockets, staring at the door she had just walked through, a soft sadness in his eyes, but also peace. He had done the right thing, even though it cost him something unspoken. Emily stepped back into the gym, but she was no longer the quiet woman who arrived tonight. Something inside her had shifted, grown, strengthened. She was ready to face the questions she had avoided, ready to step into her life with honesty instead of quiet numbness, because sometimes the greatest love is the one that lets you walk back into your world stronger, even if it means walking away.